Okay, hello everyone. So in this tutorial today, I'm going to be teaching you how to make a walk cycle for your character. Obviously, we've already created our rigged character. I've done a couple of tutorials how to make the character in Inkscape, and then a tutorial how to rig it in Opentoonz. Obviously, normally we'd be using the Adobe Creative Cloud software, but being that we're now stuck in isolation, we're looking at free software alternatives. This is actually the second time I've recorded this video. I just spent an hour recording a video only to corrupt the save file because my drive was full. I tried to save it onto. That was dumb. So hopefully this second attempt is going to be a bit more streamlined. Hopefully I'll waffle a little bit less. But essentially what we're going to do is create a looping walk cycle. Now the looping walk cycle, what I mean by that is a walk cycle that looks like it continuously carries on. So rather than animating millions of scenes to keep the character moving for as many frames as you want, you animate actually only 15 frames or that amount depending on the speed you want to animate at, and then it constantly loops, which means continues. It goes back to the start and continuously loops like it looking like it carries on forever. Okay, so this was one that I'd made beforehand in After Effects actually, but the principles are the same. So I had already created a looping animation. I did a very fast one, way too fast, but this was sort of the end effect of what we're going to go for. This is what what I achieved in the last tutorial, which you will never get to see. So, but it did bring up a few issues that we can cover here. So it's quite useful. I can do those as we go. Now, initially, when you get to the end of this animation, you'll go to your output settings and you'll try and render out your animation. Now, as standard, I've found that Opentoonz actually only has one video format, and the rest are image formats, which you can stitch together and make an animation. But what I wanted to do is export as a GIF. Like I would have done out of Photoshop or out of After Effects or something like that, but I couldn't actually do that. But there is a workaround for it, okay, and this is what I'd like everybody to do to start us off with. So on the internet, you need something called FFmpeg, okay, and I'm going to show you how to install it. Just did a bit of research and found out this was the best way. So FFmpeg essentially gives your computer a load of codecs so you can download, so you can use in different packages. But if I go onto their website, FFmpeg, go to the download link. Don't click on these buttons because it downloads all the source code and stuff. You want to do it this way, okay? So come to the download link on ffmpeg.org. FFmpeg. Now Linux, Windows, Apple. So if you're using Apple, which I know a couple of you are, you go to static builds. You want to well, it's up to you how you do it. You can download it. This one with a longer name is the one you want. You can download it as a zip and then unzip it just by clicking on here. But yeah, go for this one with a longer name. But for those of us that are using Windows, if you click on Windows here, windows.exe, yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to click on this to download. That's fine. Careful where we click, but we're going to click here, download build. So that's what I want. It's just going to download for me in the background. See how quick that's going to download for us. And what we're going to do essentially is plug this into our Opentoonz so that we'll be able to export as a GIF or use different codecs so that at the end of this we can just get a really nice rendered sort of scene available for us to play back, and then we can import that into different programs if we need, and so on and so forth. Okay, so there's a few things I will have to do to this scene to make it look like the scene that you're going to start with. So that is downloaded. Let's come to my downloads. Let's extract that here. Okay, that's cool. So what I'm going to do is rename. Actually, yeah, just press continue. That's fine. Okay, well, it's not going to let me. That's cool. Don't worry too much then. Right, so I'm just going to cut. Obviously, I could go and give it permission. So I'm going to cut and paste it. So I'm going to take out my downloads. I'm going to bring this into, actually, let's see my program files. Let's see, showing you behind the curtains here, aren't I? But I'm just going to put it onto my let's just put it on my C drive for Opentoonz stuff. Where Opentoonz downloads itself is straight onto your C drive. So what I'm going to do is just put this in the same place. So if I just paste that into my C drive alongside where Opentoonz has installed itself, it just makes things easy. And what we're going to do is use, like you see, the application files, .exe files are all in here. So what we're going to do, I don't need that anymore, is going to Opentoonz. I'm going to go File. I'm going to go to Preferences. I'm going to choose Import Export, and it'll ask me FFmpeg. So yours will probably start there. So it'll ask me for the FFmpeg path. So I click on these dots. I'm going to locate where I saved that. So I know I saved it in my C drive, and that was there. It's important that I choose the bin folder, okay, because that's where my .exe files are. So on my computer, C drive, I've chosen the name of the file, I've gone to my bin folder, press choose. Okay, that's fine. Now, I have linked it up, but you'll notice that when you come to your output settings, at the moment, there's still no GIF or anything there. What I need to do is close my file down. I just press save all, even though I never got to save it. Okay, and then we'll look at that in a minute. I'll look at all these in a minute. So then if I reopen Opentoonz, okay, I'll wait for that to reopen. Hopefully what that does essentially is just gives it a chance to install everything. So I'm going to open another scene. I did end up saving mine to my desktop in the end. Yeah, that's cool. That's what I want. So let's have a look now. So I want to, I'm going to go to render, output settings. Let's see, I've got my AVI. And it hasn't worked. Oh no, hold on, mp4.gif. Yes, it has worked. Brilliant, good stuff. My eyesight there played me up a bit. So that's good, brilliant. I've got the files that I want. I can now export as a GIF, so I'm ready to get started. Okay, so you should be at a phase at the moment where you won't have any of this yet. I will explain what this means in a minute. This was left over from my last failed attempted video. But let's get this back to where you will be. Okay, so essentially you've rigged your characters, you're ready to go, but you haven't got any animation on yours yet. Okay, God, this is frustrating me. I just want to delete these lock frames here. I don't want to fill in empty cells either. I just want to delete. So you've got these as blank, so you can ignore everything I've had in my scenes before. It shouldn't actually make a difference at the moment. We're okay. But what I want to do, let's just make sure I don't have any animation on it. Am I going anymore? No. But it is playing through. Oh, I see. Right. Let's make sure this is here. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So we're going to have a look at Richard Williams's Animator Survival Guide, okay? Richard Williams's Animator Survival Guide is a super book. It's essentially the Bible of sort of animation, really, in terms of how to move characters, how to move objects, how things work. There's a wonderful way of looking at different drawing techniques. And under normal circumstances, obviously I get my students to go into the library, get out a physical copy of this book and have a read through it. It's fantastic book. Okay, you really should. I mean, I wouldn't read it all, it's a long book, but really if you're interested in animation, it's a fantastic read. Okay, it's talking about pacing and timing. We look at the 12 principles of animation, talking about things like how a ball bounces realistically, how to time and space objects that move. It's just understanding movement, understanding how to make things look realistic or interesting, and how to show them. So this ball bounce is one of the first things you'll get to do as an animator, really. So making it look realistic, like it's making contact with the surface, and so on. But what we're looking at today is the walk cycle. Now, what I've had to do is make this PDF available to you on Moodle for my students on the Moodle forum. For those of you watching that aren't my students, obviously you're able to get a copy of this book off Amazon, or potentially buy an ebook online or so on. But it's such a useful resource. Now, I've made our resource available to us at the college on your Moodle so that you can download and take screenshots of this for reference. Okay, so this is what we're going to try and do, is create this sort of looping cycle. Now, the references that I like, so these references have got arms in, okay, and it shows the different poses. So there's these 5 different poses here. So you've got the black silhouette would represent the far side arm. So we're looking at this character. This would be what we'd call his front arm. This would be his front leg. So the one that was nearest to us. And they've silhouetted the furthest away one so that we can differentiate the two. But you can see when he's talking about contact, so this is called contact because your leading leg is making contact with the floor. Down means you're putting the pressure on that leg, so your body's coming down because the weight is shifting onto that front leg. Then the pass position, where this back leg is actually coming forward, ready to become the leading leg. You're about to put it down, so it's in the up pose, and then it makes contact. Okay, so we're back where we started here. So you would then need to repeat that and that and that for this leg to create a fully looping animation. Okay, so let's have a look. What else have we got down here? So we've got these are the poses that I find most useful. Okay, so what I actually did when I did this tutorial before was to do, I animated on 8s, but I did this essential part here, where I did 1 frame, 3 frames, 5 frames, 7 frames, 9 frames. So this represents the frame number. So in frame 1, we're making contact. In frame 3, we're down, and so on. I actually found that way too fast. And even animating on 16s might be a little bit fast, but I'm going to use this as my reference this time, I think, because it might be a bit slower. But this is like frame 1, frame 4, frame 7, frame 10, and so on. You can see where the head would be at each one of those poses and so on, which is also super useful. And we can use any of these references that we particularly want. Okay, just depends on the speed that we're going for. Now, I will probably use, let's say, this one by going on thirds. This is a little bit slower, but what I'm talking about with slower and faster is basically the more frames you have between these scenes, the slower the walk cycle is going to be. The less frames you have between, the quicker it's going to go to each pose. So therefore, the quicker the animation is going to be. So obviously, if you want a nice slow labored pose, you want more frames. Okay, so let's use this as our reference here. Now, what I'm going to do is bring this into the program. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to use my snip tool. So hopefully you're familiar with the snip tool. It's super useful. You can just drag over and highlight and try and copy and paste out, but I want to save a file, so I'm just going to go to new. I'm going to drag the scene. There you go. My snip tool does it for me. Control S to save, and I'm just going to save up my desktop ref. Okay, so I've saved my reference file. All right, now what I'm going to do is reference file saved there. I'm going to click and drag it, not into Discord, not into Opentoonz, but into my Opentoonz file. Sorry, keep existing. That's fine. Apply it. Okay, it's coming in the wrong position, so I just drag that to the end. That's fine. Now, if I make sure it's selected, I come to my animation tool, scale. Scale that up so I can clearly see it, and then I'll go to position to move it off my canvas. Now if I want to see both, just click and hold my middle mouse button like so, and I will just expand this part of the screen a bit so I've got a bit more space. So here we go. Excellent. So let's begin. Okay, right, you can see one thing as well. I can't see the arms in this reference. If you did want an idea about what the arms are doing at the same time, obviously you can come back to the page before and use the reference. Now I'm on the PDF it's page 114, but actually if you're using the book it's page 108. But yeah, it's just a nice reference there to show what's going on. So you can see when it's in contact, if the front leg is forward, the front arm will be back. The same works. So the back arm is forward, back leg is back. The same thing works for both. Okay, it's in contact it is fairly far back, but in the down poses when the arms are fully extended, they're full potential, and and then they come back to the middle for the pass pose. So we're just going to bear this in mind, okay, and we can use that as a reference as we go. So the contact pose is our first pose. Now, it is up to you here. What you can do if you really want is to create yourself a line. So you've got like a floor or something like that. If you do want, I change the size up a little bit, my minimum size. So I could just draw across a floor. Should I want one? Whoops. But should I want to draw like a pretend floor? Just holding shift down. So I'm just trying there to give myself a base floor. That's it. Just so I know when my character's making contact with it. I'm going to delete this layer at the end anyway, but it just gives me a rough reference for whether the character's feet are in line or so on. Now I could have probably used the line tool there or whatever, but I just wanted to quickly put one in. Wasn't the best I've ever drawn, that's for sure. I should have probably done it in pencil, not pressure as well. But yeah, nevertheless, I've given myself just some quick reference now. Obviously, I can then, at the end of all this, delete that layer and it will disappear. But it just gives me a point of reference for where the feet are going to be. So this first pose is my contact pose, okay? Now, my character, being that I've animated this once, is sort of already in that pose, but we've got to think about how many frames we're going to need to get us started, okay? So if we just quickly go back to our reference pose. The reference pose that I've brought in actually isn't. I'm just looking. This was the reference I took. It's 13 frames. The reference that I brought in has 9 frames. So what my computer has intuitively done for me, thinking it's helping me out, is it said, well, you've already got one called reference already stored in the file, so why don't you just use that? That is not what I wanted. So I'm going to delete this layer. Let's make sure I'm still on this. And what I'm going to do, just quickly, you won't have this problem because you won't have already bought something in called ref. I've called mine the same thing as it was called before. So I can also delete the walk cycle from earlier. I can rename ref1. Again, like I say, you won't have to do this, and I can drag it in. Oh dear, doesn't belong to the current project. Do you want to import it? Yes, I most certainly do. Thank you kindly. And again, it's helpfully brought that into number 2 for me. So let's bring this to the end. You've obviously already done this, however, there we go. Right, position, move it to there. That's nice and useful. Okay, so I can see on here there are 17 frames to get to this point, to get to the contact on the floor. Now, that's great, but if I want this to loop, what's going to happen is it's going to play all through this, and then as soon as it gets frame 17, it jumps back to the start. Now, what will happen is it will jump from back foot being in contact to front foot being in contact, and then so you can have a skip in your animation. You definitely don't want that. What you would like to do is get to a point where it looks fluidly like it's going all the way through the animation, and then it comes back to this point, but it'll look like it just continues to walk. So what we're going to need to do is get to this scene again. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then it'll be able to loop back to this. So what I mean is contact, down, pass point, up, contact. You're going to need down, pass point, and up with the foot in this position to get back to this frame. Now, that might not be so obvious the way I'm saying it, but you're about to see visually what I mean by that. So we have got frame 5, 9, 13, 17. Okay, so let's think about this realistically. So 17 frames gets us to here. We know we're getting to a point where we then need to go 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Just working out how many frames we probably need. So if we got to the up point, frame 29, and then we jump straight back, it would jump a little bit. So we probably want, let's say 30, 31, and then we'll let it come back to the start. Let's say 30, okay, let's say 30 frames. We might skip a little bit. No, let's say 31. Okay, the reason that I wanted to know how many frames we're going to do is because I'm going to highlight over these, and I will include my rubbish line and my reference for now. So I'm going to make sure they're all highlighted. You can either click and drag like I just did, or you can click on the first one, hold shift, click on the last one. That will highlight everything for you. And you'll notice on this last square, so they're all highlighted, on this last square, column 14, is this weird sort of block just underneath it. So if you click and drag that, what we're going to do is repeat the cell over and over. So there you go, I'm going to drag it down to number 31. And what that's done, oh dear, is remember all of my last frames. Right, so the computer thinks it's helping me essentially by remembering my old animation, which it isn't. So obviously if I hadn't done this before, it would, let's see, the functions have been modified. Okay, so it changes, doesn't matter, continue. No, I'd saved over this one as well. Oh, this is going well, isn't it? Okay, let's come back in here. Open recent save. Okay, let's just let's open the walk cycle one. Okay. I'm just going to pause the video while I try and delete all this out for 2 seconds and then clear it back to the start where you'll all be at. Okay, 2 seconds. This is still the fun part of my computer crashing, my file crashing. So 2 seconds. Okay, so no time would have passed for you, but I just had the palaver of deleting all my keys. So essentially I just had to right click, select all following keys, and then delete all the keys out because it still held keyframes for me, which is great. I've also deleted that line because I couldn't stand looking at it, and I thought, what's the point in bodging it? So what I'll probably do is use a geometric tool. A rectangle's fine. We could use a line, I guess. Let's use a thickness. 5, don't actually know what that's going to look like. And then let's draw ourselves a line. That's fine, something like that. Then we have to come into our animation tool, I assume, position. That gives us a rough idea now of where that contact point is. It will tidy things up for making sure that the feet are always in the same correct position, sort of thing. So we're ready to go now. I apologize for the delay and I thought this was going to be more streamlined, being that it's the second time I had to record it, but hey. So click on the first frame, click on the last frame. I'm going to drag this all the way down, which you probably would have been able to do successfully. I'm going to come down to 31. So I've duplicated that. You can see no keys or anything now. So it doesn't ever move. That's absolutely fine. But what I've got now is my character ready in post. Okay, so this first scene, the contact is where the front leg is forward, making contact with the floor, and the back leg you can see just the front of the balls of the toes and the ball of the foot are just making contact. So I've kind of got that back bit there already. So what I'm going to do, click on my back leg, make sure my animation tool is selected, I can rotate, and you'll remember because of the fact that we've already done a stage schematic, that the torso, we had all this parent and child set up. So the torso, if I were to use the move tool and move the torso, it would move the position of it. It would move the whole body. If I use the position tool to move the upper arm, it will move the lower arm as well, because we linked them together. So they're parent and child. If you remember when we did that, that was why we did it. And you're going to see the exact reason for that in just a second. So my back foot has an ever such slight bend, and the toe is making contact here. Obviously, I haven't got much dexterity in my feet because they are one solid unit. However, it will still work quite nicely. Okay, so let's rotate that front leg a little bit. There you go. And the foot is pointing up at a 90-degree angle. I'm quite happy with that. So here comes the leg, foot comes off there. Okay, and it's a straight leg. The arms, if you remember as well, if we just went back to our example, the arms aren't in full swing just yet. So the back arm is forward, the front arm is back a little bit, just like so. So I'm quite happy with that as my first frame. So the next thing I need to do is jump ahead to frame 5. So here's frame 5 here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is come here to my torso, and this is where you're going to see the relevance. Okay, so click on the frame for torso. Make sure your position tool is highlighted, and you can see the head moves down to this point. So at frame 5, the head is at a lower point. So what I'm going to do is click and drag my character down ever so slightly. Now, let's move him down. So I may want, let's just have a quick look actually if I can do this. I haven't done this before, but if I can do this via, I wonder. That's cool. So I could theoretically move him down with numbers as well. I just always quite like being quite precise with things. So I can move him down in the southward direction 9%, 10%, sorry, 10 millimeters. The chest is at a slight rotation, but the chest is at a slight rotation for all of them. So I'm not actually going to move my torso. I could rotate the torso forward and back to give him a bit more sort of swag in his walk and so on, but I'm not going to do that. I will in a minute be able to see when the knees are bent how much more I need to bring this torso down. But at the moment, the torso jumps from here to here, okay? So frame 1, frame 5. The next thing I need to do is bend this front leg. So this front leg is in full action. So make sure my rotation tool is selected. Bring it forward a little bit. Let's rotate that leg. And I can see the angle is coming back in on itself a little bit, like so. And the foot is flat against the floor, like that. Now, you might want to bring that up a fraction. Trying to line it up as best possible with this line. It doesn't have to be perfect, but there you go. So I've got that down pose for the front leg in place. Obviously I've got arms and legs to do as well. Now if you remember what I was talking about, and let's just use our reference very quickly, the arms are at full stretch during the down pose. So what I mean by that is this arm is out quite far, and obviously the further out I put it, the more of a sort of dynamic pose. It looks like he's really striding, because you're really swinging your arms if you want a really powerful sort of stride. Obviously the arms wouldn't swing too much if you were, if you're going shopping, walking around Blue Water or something like that, you're not swinging your arms massively around because you're not really walking with intent, you're walking quite carefully. So you don't have to swing them out, but I'm going to exaggerate a little bit of mine so that it makes it clearer. So these arms are in full swing. Okay, and this rear leg, I've just got to correct that one. So there's some real bend in that leg. So this leg is beginning to come forward because you can see the silhouette leg. So it's here, and it's here, and then it's here. So I can bring that in a little bit. I'm also going to bend that lower leg like so. Nice. And we've got that 90-degree angle in the foot, so it's making contact with the floor. Okay, now an important thing at the moment is, that's great. I can see this scene on its own, so I know I've set this pose, but I'm not really sure what pose I set before it. So what I can do is right-click on my scene, and I've got something called Activate Onion Skin. Now an onion skin, because onions are sort of semi-transparent, you can sort of see through each layer of an onion. Now that's why it got its name, but essentially it will allow us to see the layers beforehand. So it gives us this red. So that's the layers behind. So the reason that I've just clicked on one is so that I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, because I wanted to see 5 layers behind. So it lets me see the layer at the moment, and it lets me see the layers before. And what it does is it lets me see the movement of that piece from the layer before. So you can see my lower leg that I'm on started from here, and with our movement it's moved to here. If I want to see everything at once, obviously I could just highlight all of my layers like so. Let's watch, for example, very nice too. I can move it along. 2 secs. You can move it ahead if you want to as well. You just literally click on those blank frames. But let's use these examples. So at the moment it's only letting me do for each part. But if I were to click torso, there you go, because the torso is in charge of the whole body, I can see at this phase, I can see all of the parts, how they move, because the torso is connected to everything. So I can see the head's moving down. It's hard to see where the arms are swinging out actually. So we could potentially have a look at those. But you can see that we're getting some nice movement, okay? But anyway, onion skin's quite useful if you want to sort of make sure everything's lined up and stuff like that. Let's zoom out a little bit. So that's frame 5. So I've got my down pose. Let's go into our pass pose now, okay? So pass pose. First thing I want to do, let's have a look at that head. So it's bobbing up. It's probably just above the contact actually. So it's a little bit higher than when we made contact. So let's make sure position is highlighted. Let's make sure we're on frame 9. So we're working on the correct frame. And what I'm going to do in frame 9 is work ahead, move my head up. So I know it's 10 millimeters down. I'm going to move it to 1 millimeter. So if I moved it to 0 millimeters, it would move it back to where it was. If I move it 1, it's going to be marginally above where the contact was, which is what I want. So let's move it to 1. You could do it by eye and move it up as well, but I'm quite enjoying having the complete control of it with numbers. Okay, and then now we've got to match the legs and everything up. So let's do that. I'm just going to take a sip of drink. I'll pause the video for a sec. So let's get this pass position sorted. So make sure we're on frame 9. And as you can sort of see, right, so we've gone from 0 to 10 to, sorry, to -10 to 1. Okay, so we're up marginally higher than the contact. We just got to make sure we get these legs right. So this back leg first is in crossover. Or should we work our way down the body actually? Yeah, let's do that. So just a reference for the hands, in this crossover, you can see part of that back arm. You can just see the hand, but the arm is hidden. And the front arm is perfectly down side the body. And the hand is in between the two legs. Okay, so let's bear that in mind. So let's choose this arm. Make sure I'm on rotation. Okay, that's fine. About there. Good stuff. Let's also bring back one to about there. Excellent. Right, so this is where the big changes come in. So the front leg is near on straight. So let's, obviously we've got our floor for reference as well. So let's have a look at that. Might need to move the character up marginally then, that tells us. Okay, so with that in mind, I could either move the character up or I can give this leg a slight bend. That's fine. Actually, in fact, this leg should be back a little bit. Okay. Let's make sure that's flattish. So you just line it up by eye, really. Obviously, the character's going to have to come up, it appears. And this back leg, as it was, is going to become the front leg. So you can see it's slightly in front, but the lower leg is at this angle. So down, the ankle's pointing towards the floor. Let's just make sure that's good. Okay, so we're at the crossover point. Excellent. Again, that front leg's causing us some jip, so let's bring that forward a little bit. I will probably move the torso up a little bit to try and line him up a bit with the floor. So let's go to position. I made it 1 before. Let's see what happens if I make it 2. Okay, we're going to need to go a bit more. Let's say 5. That should probably do, and that's perfect, but It's close. Rotation. Okay. Excellent. Now we're into this up pose. So this leg that's coming forward, which is the rear leg, it's actually up so that the head, as you'll notice, comes even higher up. Now what I might do actually this time round is do it in reverse. So do the legs first, and then I'll know how high up I need the upper body to come. So this front leg, as it was, which has now become the back leg, is at full extension. So let's bring that back like that. And let's rotate that down. Nice. Might be a little bit far back. Something like that's good. Okay, let's bring this front leg. So here it was before, here it is more in front of his body. Let's bring in that lower leg. The angle's changed a little bit as well. It's starting to come down towards the ground. Leg pointing that way a bit. Let's bring it up a fraction more. Obviously in this up stage as well, we're going to have to start swinging the arms in the opposite direction. So just to clarify here, you can see the arms are starting, so this front hand is going forwards now. So let's take this one back a little bit and bring this front arm forwards a little, so the onion skin's showing where it's come from, which is good. And then all that's left really is that torso, to bring that up a little bit to make sure it's got position. So let's see what we get if we take this to 8. Push it one more, why not? 9. Let's do that. Okay, still slightly intersected, so I mean it's probably going to be a bit too elaborate if I go 10, but oh well, that'll do. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. So I've done the up pose, right, and we're back into contact, which is obviously the start pose, but contact pose with the rear leg being the lead leg now. So let's get our rotations right. So this leg is going backwards a little bit more, so let's rotate that. Nice. Obviously you don't have too much dexterity in this leg because you can bend at the toes, whereas obviously ours is all one shape. So, but that's absolutely fine for the type of detail we need. Let's rotate that forward. Obviously I don't want the stride to be too elaborate. Let's find something along those lines is good. Okay with that. This front leg should point. Obviously I've got some work to do with the back legs. These should be in line. So I'm really going to have to exaggerate this back leg a little bit. So I'll bring that down so it's not quite as crazy. Bring that up. Bring that back leg, like I said, let's bring it a little bit. Take the bottom leg a little bit. There we go. Now, like I said, that means now that we've... Oh, I just realised. I haven't been jumping ahead, have I? I've been doing it all on the same... I haven't been jumping ahead, so I didn't do the up. I've been doing this all on frame 9, so I didn't do the up on frame 13. I haven't done this contact on frame 17. That is infuriating. So let's come all the way back to the pass position as best possible. Okay, so that leg needs to come forward a fraction. Excellent. Right, that's the pass position as it was. Well, that's frustrating, isn't it? Well done, Giles. Right, so we're still on frame 9. So even in my second attempt, I'm still messing this up. Hopefully you haven't made the same mistakes I have. I apologise. Right, let's bring it up to 5. Okay, that's fine. So pass position completed. Practice makes perfect, I guess. And then let's go to the up position. So, most importantly, let's go to frame 13. We're working on frame 13 now. I've got to redo this pose. Okay, so yes, the torso is coming up a little bit. We'll know how far in a minute by the leg, but I reckon we can come up. We found out before as high as 10. Then let's animate the arms. So using the example before, his arms are going to be slightly swung out. So his front arm's coming forward, his back arm is going back. So let's go a little bit like that. And that arm's starting to come back here. And legs. This leg is starting to go backwards. So the toe is down. And the other leg is starting to come forwards. Hasn't made contact with the ground yet though. I can rotate a little bit of that leg. Let's rotate a little bit of the ankle. Excellent. Right, so there's our up pose. Let's not forget to do 17 this time. So come to frame 17. Let's start this time around. Like I said before, we'll move the torso at the end. So this time around, I will start with the leg. So make sure I'm on frame 17. Apologies. So I'm going to extend this leg fully out. Let's. Don't want to go that way. Sorry. I want to extend that fully out. That's cool. Let's give the flick to the ankle a little bit. Nice. Let's look at his back leg too. I might have exaggerated his pose slightly too much. Like this stride there is crazy, and it might be too high up. But these things we can go back and correct once we've seen the animation. Like it's this isn't, we're not set in stone. Like we're not stuck with where we're at. Okay, yeah, I think it's gone well too high in that frame beforehand. So let's say 0, because I don't want him basically to jump too far down as his body comes down. So maybe he can come down -5, and then I'll do some more bending of the legs, because I don't want to I don't want the difference between the frames to be too much that he looks like he's physically jumping mid-step. So something like that. It's okay. Okay, so frame 17. So remember, this is the point. We've come to the end, but now we want to finish this so it loops. So I don't want to repeat this because I'm on contact. I don't want to repeat contact. I do want to repeat the down, but it'll be in the reverse of what we can see here. So remember, the down is when the arms are at full swing. You've got to remember this arm, which I didn't correct in the last pose either, did I? So let's make sure I correct. So I'm still on frame 17. Let's just make sure I correct that. So much to remember. And that. And then, right, so we're going to jump ahead. 1, 2, 3. So let's jump ahead to, right, so we would go 18, 19, 20. Let's go ahead to 21, let's say. So I'm on frame 21 now. And I'm going to be doing this, but obviously in reverse. So currently I've got the back leg selected. So let's see, the back leg is starting to come forward. So the back leg would be about here. Although obviously it's at a full bend. So let's bend that. We're coming down marginally, not too much, but the body will be coming down. So I know this foot's going to intersect for a bit. That's absolutely fine. This, I might have to bend it as well in a bit. This front leg as it is, which is actually the back leg, is coming back a little bit. But obviously all the weight is shifted onto this leg. So if you look, the bend, which is probably a bit more than that, it's like that. The foot is flat on the floor, a bit like that. Okay, although obviously I'm going to move the torso down marginally, so I probably do want that. And then that. Excellent. Okay, so we're sort of mimicking that. I do think probably he's not leaning enough on that front leg. So I could something like that. Straighten up that leg again, and then come into this back leg a bit, move it back up a fraction. Okay, that's fine because it's still moving. So let's move the torso down. Still on frame 21, torso, position. I believe it came down as far as 10 before, didn't it? Yep. Okay. So if I wanted to check what value I used before, I think at frame 5, which was my original down, I used -10. Yes, that's good. So I can use those values. Make sure I'm getting the same height, the same amount of bounce. So I've done my down pose. So 22, 23, 24, 25. I'm going to come to frame 25. Let's have a look. So I'm in the pass position. Obviously in that down pose as well, those arms, which I keep forgetting, should be at full extension. So just before I do go to frame 25, let's make sure I bring my arms out. Mustn't keep forgetting the arms. Okay, nice. Let's go to frame 25 then. Pass position. So I know I can then bring that right back down. And I can then bring that arm right back here. There, probably. That's cool. So, oops. So we're in the reverse of this now, so you'd be able to just see the front through it. The back would be down alongside the body. So the back would be about there. Front's about there. That's good. Okay. I might let's do the front so you can see a little bit of it at least. And then that's cool. So we're at pass position for the arms. Let's now do pass position for the legs. So the back leg that's coming forward is now all the way to here. The lower leg is here, sort of dragged up off the floor a little bit. The angle of the foot has changed slightly. Oops, like that. Okay. But this leg is the important one, where all the weight is on this leg, but this leg is the straightened leg now. So let's, obviously that's going to affect the height difference as well. Let's make sure I've got the right one selected. So that would be about here. Means I'm going to rotate the other leg forward a bit. It tells me that I should be able to see the other foot. So there, rotate that front foot. I'm just going to have to jump up quite a bit. Let's rotate this so you can see it marginally through. Yeah, that's good. Quite happy with that pose. I just need to bring it right up. So if I look originally at frame 9, what the value was. So if I scroll up to frame 9, torso, frame 9. What position did I have it at? 5mm. Let's see what that looks like. If that compares torso, let's change that to 5mm. It's nearly there. It's pretty good. If I just go back and check what I did at 9 before, there's a slight bend in the leg, but it is coming through the line ever so slightly. Yeah, so I'm fairly happy with that. I don't think it's too bad whatsoever. I could line it up, but we're okay. Right, so we're at frame 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. So frame 29, let's do the arms because you know I'll forget those. So front arm is starting to swing backwards. Obviously I've got the back one selected for some reason. I've said front. So back arm is starting to come forwards. So a bit like there. Might actually put some bend in it. Oh no, I'm going to leave the bend off actually because it's going to loop. So we're at frame 29. Let's go to the back arm so I don't forget that one either. You know what I'm like. Start swinging that forward. This is the pose we're looking for, the up position. Okay, so let's create this. So this foot will now be going backward. So make sure I'm working on 29. So this pose, something like that. That's a bit. we've got to move the height up again. The front leg, as we know, is coming forwards. Nearly there. Should be higher than the ground plane though, which is fine, because obviously this has got to come up. Let's rotate that front foot marginally. That's fine. Don't mind that. Let's go to the torso. Move up the torso. Again, we can look at frame 13, see what value we gave it there. So at frame 13 it had 10 millimeters. So frame 29, I can change that to 10. Okay, happy with that. And then what that will do then, we might just, on frame 31, we might start getting it to look, because obviously now the issue is, yes, it will copy through, but what I could do, well, I've got two choices. I can either copy that first frame to make sure everything's exactly the same as it was at the start, but then I'd have a duplicate frame. But I could copy it to frame 32, but then tell the computer I only wanted to render up until page 30, until 31, or I could just try and get as close to as possible. So what I mean by that, let's have a look at each of these joints. So the torso, so if I go through the torso at frame 1 is at height 0. Okay, so I know I'm coming down from 10, because in this pose I'm at 10. Okay, in this pose I'm at 0. So I can start, you can see where the head's coming down, I can start to be bringing it down from here so that it doesn't just jump. So let's choose 5. So it's coming down, starting to come down, ready to finish that loop off for me. Okay, so the torso is already down, then I've got to start looking at the shape of the other leg. So let's look at, in frame 1, this leg here, this back leg is here, this angle like this. So let's try and line that up. So if I come right down to page 31, number 31. So I need to start rotating that leg a little bit. Rotate ever so slightly. It's more the bottom of the leg I want to rotate a little bit. Doesn't have to be too much. This is mid-step, so yes, it would be stepping through the floor. It's not an issue so much. The arm would be moving in a forward direction, as would, I mean, it doesn't have to move too far forward, obviously. The leg itself, moving forward a fraction, in fact, really fractional, but I will start to bring this leg forward. That's the important bit, that this leg is coming through the lower section of the leg, getting ready to come into that step. Torso I've done, the leg I've done, it's just this arm needs to, so if we start moving that arm fraction backwards as well. Right, so theoretically now I have everything I need for my animation. So let's make sure my line comes to page 31. Let's see what I've got. So if there's a button here called loop, if I just press that, nice, here's my walk. Yes, like I said before, the stride is a bit elaborate, a little bit too much. So where, you know, we were rotating it out a little bit, maybe he looks like he's walking a little bit much. And like I said, his arms, he's swinging a little bit far, which means it looks a bit like he's exerting quite a lot of effort. So if I wanted to make it look a bit more of a minimalist walk, I probably wouldn't rotate these legs out too much. I'd bring, you know, where I'm here in full extension, I'd bring the leg down to about here, you know, and not make it too as obvious, like not make these strides quite as big, and I'd not pull the arms out quite as far. So I'd have the arms rotate from about here to here, you know, on a pendulum, like here to here to here to here, you know, so it wasn't really going into full stretch. So that line that helped us has served its purpose. So let's come to, well, I can pause this now, I don't need this anymore. This line has served its purpose, so you can either hide it if you want, or you can right click and delete, because I don't need the line anymore. I'm also quite happy that the reference I don't actually require anymore. That didn't really do much for me. In terms of, oh, sorry, it did do a lot for me. It helped massively, but it didn't do a lot for me in terms of animating it. Sorry, I don't need it as part of my animation. One thing, make sure you save. Did have a crash file earlier as well, not just the file I spoke about. I did also manage to crash the first attempt file. So now I know I've got a looping animation. At the start of this animation, we recorded a GIF. So what we're going to do now, we're going to render it out, output. Where am I going to save this to? So yes, I'm quite happy to save it onto my desktop. You can save it wherever you like. Man walk cycle, that's fine. I'm going to call mine man walk cycle GIF just in case it's already saved as anything. I'm going to choose GIF. I'm going to, if you want to change the size, you're welcome to. Obviously under here you've got custom sizes, so you can render at 1080 or 720 or whatever you want to do, or even 480. Realistically, do we need it to be of maximum quality? Probably not. Dots per inch, 44. You know, the original size that we drew ours at was actually 1920 1080, so you could render it out of that size should you wish. Just for the sake of speed or whatever, I might do mine at 720, so 1280 by 720. If you wanted to change those, so you want a different aspect ratio, you type your number in here, press the lock button, type a different one in here, press it. We're rendering camera 1, which you can see is this camera here. You can render zoom in and zoom out by actually scaling using that camera, which you can see is here. You can make it animatable. You could then use the animation tool to scale that camera, which would scale the size of the canvas up and down. But we don't need to do that, okay? So we've chosen where we're saving, we've chosen the size, we've chosen the name. Just going to press render, fingers crossed I'm not going to get any error this time. Okay, I've never used the GIF tool on here before on Opentoonz. Obviously, I haven't actually ever done anything with Opentoonz before, so here it is. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, there you go. So we've got a nice animated character. It's looping perfectly through. We don't particularly have any popping or anything like that, which you normally get if you've jumped. If it looks like he's quickly skipping from one scene to another, what I mean by that is one pose to another, it's because you haven't quite got it looping through or you've missed part of it, okay? So you just need to go through and watch frame by frame to make sure that you've animated each pose correctly. But he's got this kind of like really purposeful sort of laboured walk. Obviously his joints are popping a little bit where we've set the rotation points. I'm not too worried about that. I think he looks neat. Definitely looks like he's walking. Obviously you could render him on a background, but the reason I've rendered him on a transparent background as a GIF is because now I could drop him on top of any background. You can see from the thumbnail he's got transparent background. I could drop him on top of any background and he'd look like he was in that scene. Okay, it's like rendering the alpha channel behind is rendering a PNG transparency. So looks nice. Getting a bit of artifact in there actually with his hair, but other than that, he looks fantastic. I'm happy enough with that. He's a simple character, but this will work brilliantly for your games, and hopefully you've enjoyed this tutorial and you've been able to follow it. If you've got any questions, ask on the Discord if you're one of my students. If you're not, try and get in contact with me via YouTube or whatever. Thanks so much. Bye.